I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of my uniform. The fabric felt heavy on my shoulders, the weight of it more symbolic today than ever before. Each medal, each insignia spoke of years spent fighting battles I never expected to face. On the battlefield and off. The deep blue of my Navy uniform reflected the person I had become, strong, disciplined, unyielding. But today the stakes were different. The courtroom would be my next battle, and I knew it. I wasn't facing enemy forces or insurgents this time. I was facing my own family. My name is General Natalie Rivers. I'm 42 years old and I live in Norfolk, Virginia. I've spent my life defending this country, earning respect and recognition in a world that rarely acknowledges women, let alone mothers like me. But none of that seemed to matter today. Today, my own mother and ex-husband were fighting against me, accusing me of being an unfit mother because of my career in the Navy. They wanted my daughter, Emma. My little girl, the one I had raised with all my heart, was now caught in the crossfire of a battle I never imagined would come from the people who were supposed to support me the most. I took a deep breath and examined my reflection. The woman staring back at me wasn't some helpless mom or broken ex-wife. She was a soldier, a warrior. The medals on my chest weren't just for show. They told the story of a woman who had fought for everything she had, her career, her dignity, her family. And I wasn't about to let anyone strip that away from me, not even my own flesh and blood. Today wasn't just about defending my honor. It was about defending Emma. And nothing in this world, no lie, no accusation, would make me back down from that fight. My phone buzzed on the counter, snapping me from my thoughts. I reached for it without hesitation. It was a text from my lawyer. The hearing was starting in less than an hour. Everything is ready. We'll be waiting for you. Don't let them rattle you. I smiled, despite myself. I wasn't rattled. I'd faced down far worse than this. But this was personal. This wasn't some mission in a foreign country. This was my life, my daughter, and my family. The people who should have had my back, who should have known better, were the very ones trying to tear me apart. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence of my apartment wash over me. It was the calm before the storm, and I knew exactly what was coming. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. As I turned to leave, I paused at the door, taking one last look in the mirror. I was no longer just a soldier. I was a mother, a protector, and today I would prove to everyone, including my own family, that no one, no matter how close they were, would take my daughter from me. The world might be watching, but I would not be broken. I would stand tall, and I would fight. I walked out determined to reclaim my story. The air was thick with tension as I sat in my car outside the courthouse, hands gripping the steering wheel. I had been here countless times before, but this was different. Today wasn't about military strategy or foreign diplomacy. This was about family. And in a way, it felt like I was fighting a war in my own home. I wasn't even sure where the betrayal had started. Maybe it was when I returned home from my year-long deployment expecting to be greeted with open arms. Instead, I found a cold silence and legal papers. I'll never forget the moment I saw those papers on the kitchen table. My heart had skipped a beat as I flipped through them. Divorce papers. And worse, they weren't just from my ex-husband, Mark. They were a joint effort filed by both him and my mother, who I had always considered my greatest ally. I couldn't understand it. My mother, had sided with Mark in his bid for sole custody of Emma. The accusations were false. They claimed I was too absent, that I'd neglected Emma emotionally because of my military career. They didn't mention the long nights I spent on the phone with Emma during my deployment, the letters I sent her, the time I managed to carve out to come home on leave. They didn't mention the fact that I had always been there for Emma when she needed me most. But I guess that didn't matter. Not when it was easier for them to see me as the villain. I had tried to call my mother that night. I remember hearing her voice on the other end of the line, her tone cold, like we were strangers instead of family. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, my voice cracking, though I tried to sound strong. "Why would you side with Mark?" "I'm just trying to do what's best for Emma," she had said, her words clipped. "You're not the same person you used to be, Natalie. You're never home. You've chosen your career over her." That was the moment the truth hit me. It wasn't just my ex-husband who saw me as disposable. My own mother, the woman who had raised me, who had always told me I could do anything, was now choosing him over me. She was using Emma as a pawn, and I was being thrown away like I never mattered. The tears came then, but I quickly wiped them away. No one would see me cry. Not now. not when everything I had worked for was crumbling around me. A couple of months later, after countless hours in legal battles, the custody hearing was finally set. And here I was, ready to face the people who had betrayed me. I walked into the courthouse with my head held high, each step echoing in the empty hallways. My uniform was immaculate, every ribbon and medal perfectly in place. I didn't need to prove anything with words. My presence would do that for me. The courtroom was already filled with people as I entered. The judge's desk stood at the front, flanked by rows of seats for the spectators. The opposing side was already there. Mark, his lawyer, and sitting beside him, my mother. Her face was unreadable. She didn't even look at me as I entered. Instead, she stared ahead, hands folded in her lap. I couldn't help but feel a stab of pain seeing her there, so calm, so detached. She was the one who had always told me family was everything. But here she was, siding with the man who had broken our family apart. I looked to Mark, sitting on the other side of the room. His face, as always, wore a smug expression like he was already winning. His eyes flicked to mine, and for the briefest moment, I saw a flicker of doubt. But it was gone in an instant. He didn't know what I was capable of. He didn't know the fight I was about to put up. The room fell silent as I walked to my seat. My lawyer, a quiet but competent man named Thomas, leaned over to me. "We've got this," he whispered, his confidence reassuring. But it wasn't his confidence I needed. It was my own. And I wasn't about to let the people I loved turn me into someone I wasn't. The judge entered the room, and the proceedings began. As I listened to Mark's lawyers spin their narrative, claiming I was an absentee mother, that my career was a distraction, I felt the anger rise in my chest. These were lies. All of it was a lie. But I kept quiet. Let them talk. Let them build their case. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly, taking a deep breath. My heart was pounding, but I pushed forward, forcing myself to stay calm. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady. "I am here today not just as a soldier, but as a mother, and nothing is more important to me than my daughter's well-being." I let those words hang in the air for a moment, letting them sink in before continuing. I have served this country proudly, and yes, I've spent time away from home, but I have never once abandoned my daughter. Every decision I've made, every sacrifice I've made has been for her future, for her safety, for her opportunity to have a better life. I could feel their eyes on me now, Mark's cold stare, my mother's blank expression, but I didn't falter. I may not be perfect. I may not be there for every school recital or every soccer game, but I've made sure Emma has a future that's not defined by the constraints of a broken system. I turned to my mother, and I never expected to have to fight for my right to be her mother. But I will. The judge looked at me, his eyes unreadable, but I could tell I'd made an impact. I wasn't just a soldier, I was a mother. And today, I was going to prove it. I could feel the weight of the courtroom pressing down on me as I stepped into the room. Every inch of space seemed charged with a quiet anticipation, like the air itself was holding its breath. The murmur of voices died as soon as I entered, and I could feel the eyes of everyone on me. I didn't need to look up to know that my mother was sitting there, her gaze cold and distant, her posture stiff. And on the other side of the room, Mark sat with his lawyer, his face twisted into a self-satisfied smirk. He thought he had already won. But today wasn't about them. Today was about me and my daughter. I walked to my seat with the same measured steps I had taken in battlefields and briefing rooms across the world. Every medal on my chest, every ribbon, every inch of my uniform spoke louder than words ever could. This was the silent strength I had fought to build for years. This was who I was. The judge stood as I entered, a gesture of respect that sent a ripple of silence through the room. He may not have known it, but in that one action, he was acknowledging more than just my position in the military. He was recognizing my presence, my strength, before anything else could be said. "Please sit, General Rivers," the judge said, gesturing toward the chair in front of him. His voice was calm, neutral, but there was an underlying tone that made me feel like this was a courtroom, not just a stage for a legal battle. I sat, my back straight, and the room fell into a tense silence. Everyone was watching, waiting for the next move. Mark's lawyer, a tall man with slicked back hair and an air of arrogance, stood first. His eyes flicked between me and the judge, the unspoken message clear. This was a formality. He was already confident of victory. "Your Honor," he began smoothly, "we are here today to determine the best interests of Emma Rivers, a child who has, regrettably, been left to fend for herself in an environment dominated by her mother's military career. He gestured toward me with a dramatic flourish, his tone thick with insinuation. General Rivers, as we all know, spends the majority of her time away from home. The very nature of her job requires her to be stationed across the globe, leaving her daughter behind to face the instability of frequent relocations, absenteeism, and, ultimately, a lack of consistent maternal care. I didn't flinch. His words were hollow to me. Mark's lawyer continued, Emma deserves the stability of a more traditional home environment, one where she can be cared for without the constant worry of whether or not her mother will be there. We believe the best place for Emma is with her father, Mark Rivers. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I held my ground. They were painting me as some absent parent, a stranger to my own child. The same lies Mark had been telling since the divorce. I wasn't just angry, I was disgusted, but I didn't let it show. Your Honor, I said, standing, my voice calm but unwavering. I've heard a lot about what I supposedly am, what I supposedly lack as a mother, but I'm not here to justify my career. I'm here to fight for my daughter. Because I've been there, every step of the way. I was there for her first words, her first steps. I was there on the phone reading her bedtime stories every night I was away. I sent letters, I sent gifts, and most importantly, I sent my love every single day, even when I wasn't physically home. The lawyer didn't interrupt, but I could see him tightening his jaw. His next move would be to try to tear apart my every word. But I wasn't backing down. I've sacrificed my time, I've sacrificed moments with my daughter, but I've never sacrificed my love for her. I chose this career, not just for myself, but for her, for the future we're building together. And if that makes me a bad mother, then I'm guilty as charged. But if you're asking if I'm fit to be Emma's mother, the answer is yes. 1,000 times yes. The room seemed to hold its breath. Mark's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. He knew I had turned the tables on him. I wasn't just a soldier, I was Emma's mother, and no one could take that away from me. I turned toward my mother then, my gaze sharp and unwavering. I hadn't addressed her yet, but I could feel her presence, the quiet figure who had for the past few months been silent in the background of this battle. Mom, I said, my voice lowering but carrying with a strength I didn't even know I had until now. I understand you may feel like I've chosen this career over family, but you know better than anyone that I've always tried to balance both. You know, I've never put my job before Emma. I've never put anything before her. But somehow you've sided with Mark, a man who left us, a man who's been inconsistent at best. How can you justify that? There was no answer at first. She didn't speak, but I saw her eyes dart to Mark, then quickly away, as if she couldn't bear to look at me. I didn't care. This wasn't about her comfort. This was about Emma. The judge cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had fallen over the room. General Rivers, please sit. Let's not turn this into an emotional argument. His tone wasn't harsh, but firm. I sat down again, breathing deeply, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. I wasn't done. I wouldn't be. Mark's lawyer stood again, this time with a smug look on his face, as if the words I had just spoken hadn't even registered. General Rivers, we've heard enough of your emotional appeal. Let's talk facts. He turned to the judge, then back to me. You may be a decorated military officer, but you failed to provide Emma with the stability she needs. Your daughter needs a full-time mother, not a career woman who shows up only when it's convenient. She needs to be with her father, who will ensure she gets the stable, structured environment she deserves. I felt my pulse quicken as the lawyer's words hit their mark. He was trying to paint me as the villain, the bad mother, but I wasn't going to let him win. Not this time. Not with Emma's future hanging in the balance. The judge nodded, acknowledging the lawyer's argument, but his eyes flicked to me, then to my mother, who still hadn't spoken. I held my breath, waiting for the next move. Would my mother speak up for me? Would she be the one to finally acknowledge the truth, that I was not a failure as a mother? Or would she remain silent, just as she had when Mark and I had first divorced? In that moment, everything hinged on her response. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if she'd stand with me. It was late in the afternoon when I overheard them. The voices drifted through the hallway, hushed, but sharp enough to cut through the quiet of my home. My mother and sister. The low murmur of their conversation was just loud enough to catch my attention, even though I hadn't intended to listen. But once I heard it, I couldn't stop. I was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes, trying to occupy my hands so my mind wouldn't race with everything happening at the courthouse. The hearing had adjourned for the day, but I knew the real battle wasn't over. It had just begun. I needed space, time to breathe, but that's when I heard the voices. I can't believe she's actually doing this. My mother's voice was a whisper, tight with frustration. She's completely lost it. After everything we've done for her, for Emma, she thinks she can just waltz in here and take her from us? My heart twisted painfully in my chest. I knew she wasn't talking about the hearing. This wasn't just about custody. This was about me, about the betrayal that had been building for years, slowly wearing down the foundation of our relationship until it cracked wide open. I know, my sister replied, her voice just as cold. And the worst part is, she thinks she's better than us. Like, just because she wears that uniform and has those medals, she's the hero, and we're all the villains. I closed my eyes. My hands went still, the plate in my hand forgotten as I stood there, frozen. She's so wrapped up in herself, and now, she wants to drag Emma into this, make it all about her. I can't even look at her right now. She's ruined everything. There it was, the truth. My mother's words cut deep, but it was the quiet venom in my sister's voice that stung the most. They weren't just judging my career. They weren't just criticizing my choices as a mother. They were rejecting me. The person I had become, the woman I had worked so hard to be, was nothing to them. They wanted the old Natalie, the one who didn't need to leave, the one who was there for every dinner, every holiday, every moment. They didn't understand what it meant to fight, to sacrifice everything for a cause that was bigger than yourself. And worst of all, they didn't see Emma as my daughter. They saw her as an object to be taken, a pawn in their game. I stood there trying to steady my breath, feeling the bitter sting of their words crawl under my skin. This wasn't just about custody. This was about something much deeper. It was about family, yes, but also about who I was. And to them, I wasn't enough. I was never enough. Then, as if on cue, my sister's voice rose again. We've been trying to help her for years and she just keeps pushing us away. And now this whole thing with Emma, it's like she doesn't even care. She doesn't even see how much this is tearing the family apart. She's just too wrapped up in her own damn uniform and medals to realize how much we've sacrificed for her. Sacrificed for me. I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. I wanted to walk into the living room, confront them both, and demand an explanation. Tell them how much I had sacrificed, how much I had lost to be who I was. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I stood in that kitchen holding the plate, my fingers trembling, listening to their words spiral around me. It wasn't just that they were angry. It was the cold, calculated way they had conspired against me. The way they had whispered behind my back, betraying not just my trust, but everything I had done for them. For us. And in that moment, I understood. They hadn't just sided with Mark. They had chosen him. They had chosen the man who had walked out on us years ago, the man who had failed Emma, over the woman who had always tried to be there. That was the first breaking point. I didn't even realize when the tears started, but I felt them now, hot and heavy, slipping down my face. My mother's words kept echoing in my head. She's completely lost it. I wasn't just fighting for custody of Emma anymore. I was fighting to reclaim my place in this family. But as I wiped my eyes and set the plate down, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to let them, break me. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even the people who were supposed to love me most, define who I was. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone from the counter and sent a single text to my lawyer. We need to fight harder. This isn't just about Emma. It's about everything. I won't let them tear us apart. I hit send. The words felt heavy in my chest, but they were true. And I was going to fight for Emma, for me, for our family, because at the end of the day, I was her mother. And that was a bond no one, no matter what they said, could ever break. The days following the hearing were a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and restless nights. My mind was consumed with the case, with the courtroom, with Mark and my mother's betrayal. But in the quiet moments when the weight of it all pressed down on me, I couldn't shake the fear that kept gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. I wasn't just fighting against Mark's lies. I wasn't just defending my place as Emma's mother against a courtroom of strangers. I was fighting against something much darker, something I didn't even know existed until now. I was sitting at my desk late one night reviewing documents when my phone buzzed on the table. A number I didn't recognize flashed on the screen. Hello, I answered, rubbing my eyes, my voice hoarse from hours of work. General Rivers? The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but the tone was urgent. This is Detective Hernandez with Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about your daughter, Emma. I sat up straight, the blood draining from my face. What's happened to Emma? My voice came out sharp, panicked. Is she okay? She's fine for now, but there's something you need to know. There was a pause, and the detective's voice became lower, more serious. We've received an anonymous tip about a woman named Melissa, Mark's new girlfriend. We've been looking into her background. There's a history of child welfare issues, neglect, abuse allegations. They were buried under the rug, but they're there. I felt the ground beneath me shift. My body went cold as the weight of the words hit me. Melissa? The woman Mark had been dating for months, the one who had been around Emma like a parental figure. I had never trusted her. Something about her felt off from the start, but to hear the words neglect and abuse tied to her name, it was a punch to the gut. Melissa? I whispered. Are you saying she's a danger to Emma? We don't have all the details yet, Detective Hernandez said, but I'm recommending that you look into this. We have reason to believe that Emma might be at risk while she's with her father and Melissa. I'd advise you to be cautious. We'll keep you informed as we investigate further. The words hung in the air, echoing in my mind. At risk. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to storm over to Mark's house and confront him. How could he let someone like her be around Emma? Thank you, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll take it from here. Please keep me updated. I ended the call and sat there, frozen, my mind racing. Melissa's past, her history of neglect, was a threat I hadn't even seen coming. How could Mark not have known? Or worse, how could he not have cared? I thought about Emma, her bright, trusting eyes, the way she'd laugh and curl into my arms after a long day. How could anyone put that kind of innocence in danger? I had to act fast. I couldn't let Emma stay in that environment, not knowing what I knew now. But as the shock wore off, the reality of what I had to do sank in. If I confronted Mark about this, it would be another battle. A public battle, one that could cost me more than just custody. I could lose everything. My reputation, my career. The stakes had never been higher, but none of that mattered in this moment. My daughter's safety was all that mattered. I quickly grabbed my phone again, pulling up my lawyer's number. I needed to act quickly, and I needed to be strategic. The fight for Emma's future was already in motion, but now I had ammunition. Thomas, I said as soon as he answered, my voice sharp, we've got a serious problem. I need you to look into Melissa. There's a history of abuse and neglect allegations, and I think it's time we use this to our advantage. We can't let Emma stay with Mark and her. We need to move fast. Thomas's voice was calm but firm. I'll start looking into it right away. I'll need you to get me any evidence you have on her, anything we can use to build a case. We need to make sure Emma is safe. I'll get it to you, I said, already grabbing my keys and heading for the door. I'll do whatever it takes. The drive to Mark's house was a blur. I wasn't thinking straight. My mind was consumed with thoughts of Emma. Was she okay? Was she safe? I knew deep down that I had to take action, now. When I pulled up to the house, the familiar feeling of dread filled my chest. I could already picture it. Mark lounging on the couch, pretending like everything was normal, while Emma was in the next room, unaware of the danger that lurked just beneath the surface. I had to confront him. I had to do it now before it was too late. But as I stepped out of the car, a sense of cold certainty washed over me. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. This fight, this battle for Emma, wasn't just going to be about my rights as a mother. It was about protecting her, no matter the cost. I walked up to the front door, my heart pounding in my chest. Tonight, everything would change. The drive home was long, longer than it should have been. I barely registered the streets I passed or the time ticking away. All I could think about was Emma. The discovery about Melissa, what I had learned from the detective, had shaken me to my core. The quiet strength I'd been holding on to all these years now felt fragile, thin. Every thought I had seemed to revolve around Emma's safety. I couldn't believe what I'd just uncovered. The woman Mark had chosen to be with, the one who was supposed to be looking after Emma when she was with him, she was hiding a past steeped in neglect, accusations of child endangerment. It was like someone had thrown a brick into the calm waters of my life and the ripples wouldn't stop. The moment I reached my apartment, I slammed the door behind me. I didn't bother to take off my uniform, didn't feel like I deserved to, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The uniform I wore to represent strength, discipline, honor, it now felt like a shackle, holding me back from what really mattered. Emma needed me. She needed me to be more than just a general. She needed me to be her mother, and I was failing her. I sank down onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. This wasn't just a legal battle. It wasn't about winning in court. This was about my daughter, my flesh and blood, and I was terrified. For the first time in a long time, I didn't know if I was enough. And then, in the silence, a thought cut through my panic, clear and sharp. I can do this. I have to. I sat up, wiping my face. My eyes were red, but I wasn't going to let the exhaustion, the fear, or the doubt take me down. I had faced worse, much worse, in the Navy. I had led men and women into battle, had kept my cool under fire. I had built a career, a life from nothing. But now, I had something more important to fight for than any mission, any medal, any rank. I have Emma. I picked up my phone, dialing Thomas's number with a steady hand. The ringing felt like an eternity. "Thomas," I said when he picked up. My voice was stronger than it had been all day. "We have to move fast. I need everything we can find on Melissa. Everything. This is more than just a custody case now. She's a danger to Emma, and I'm not going to sit around and wait while she's under his roof." I heard Thomas shifting on the other end of the line, his usual calm replaced with an urgency that mirrored my own. "I'll start digging into her past immediately. We'll need evidence, records, anything that ties her to these allegations. But you're right. This isn't just about custody anymore. This is about Emma's safety. You're doing the right thing, Natalie." I took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of the strength I'd once known surge back into my chest. "Thank you. Just keep me posted. And don't let Mark get away with this. If he's involved in hiding her past, if he's lying about her, then he's not just a bad father. He's part of the problem." "Understood," Thomas said. "We'll make sure of it. Stay strong." "You're not alone in this." The line went dead, and for a second, I just sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. It was funny. For so long, I had believed that my career defined me, that the uniform, the medals, the rank, those were what made me strong. But that wasn't what made me powerful. What made me powerful was the love I had for Emma, the bond I had built with her over all these years. The late nights we had spent talking, the time I had sacrificed, the devotion I had given her, even when I was far away. I stood up, pacing the room as the weight of my realization sank in. The truth was, I wasn't just fighting for Emma's safety. I was fighting for the right to be seen as her mother, not just the soldier, not just the woman with the uniform. I wasn't some absentee parent. I was her protector, her advocate, and her home. I grabbed my keys from the counter, ready to go. I wasn't going to let this darkness shadow over my daughter's life. I wasn't going to let Melissa's past, Mark's manipulation, ruin the future I was fighting for. I had a long road ahead of me. There would be more obstacles, more battles to face. But this time, I knew who I was fighting for. This time, I was ready. I would fight with everything I had, and no matter what happened, I wouldn't stop until Emma was safe. The door slammed shut behind me as I headed out into the night. The fight for Emma's future had just begun, and I wasn't backing down. The courtroom was packed when I arrived, the buzz of whispered conversations filling the air as people filed in, taking their seats. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I refused to let it show. I wasn't going to let nerves or fear take control today. This wasn't just another legal battle. This was my fight, and I was done playing by their rules. I walked into the courtroom with the same steady, determined stride I'd used in combat zones, in boardrooms, and in the toughest situations of my career. The space felt smaller than usual today, the weight of every eye on me almost suffocating. But I wasn't going to let it shake me. Not today. Mark was already seated on the opposite side, his face smug as always. But there was something different about him now, something I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the subtle shift in his posture, the way his shoulders were stiff, his eyes darting nervously between the judge and me. Or maybe it was the way his lawyer kept glancing at him, speaking in hushed tones. I could feel it. He knew the game was about to change. The judge, a stern-looking man with graying hair and glasses perched on the edge of his nose, called the court to order. He didn't stand when I entered, but the shift in the room's energy told me everything I needed to know. "General Rivers," the judge said, his tone measured, "we are here today to settle the custody issue regarding your daughter, Emma Rivers. You've presented a compelling case, but it is now time for both sides to provide their final arguments." I nodded, my jaw tight. It was time. I stood and approached the bench with steady steps, the weight of my uniform both grounding and empowering me. This was it, my moment. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't about to let it slip away. I began with the one thing that mattered most. Your Honor, I stand here not as a soldier, not as a general, but as a mother. And today I'm fighting not for myself, but for my daughter, for her safety, for her well-being, for her future. I glanced at Mark as I spoke, but his eyes quickly darted to the floor. His lawyer shifted in his seat, not quite as confident as before. The accusations against me, I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word, are not just baseless. They are an attempt to erase the truth. I have been present for every moment of Emma's life that mattered. I have fought for her future, sacrificed for her happiness, and given everything I had to make sure she knew she was loved, even when I was far from home. Emma is not a pawn in my career. She is my daughter, and I am her mother. This is not just about what I do for a living. This is about a bond that no one can sever. I let the words sink in. The silence in the room grew heavier, but I pressed on. Now, let me address the matter of Melissa, I said, my voice clear and sharp. The room seemed to hold its breath. Mark stiffened, his lawyer's eyes narrowing. I could see it, even if no one else could. He knew this was the turning point. Your Honor, I've just recently been made aware of disturbing information about Mark's girlfriend, Melissa. There is a history of child welfare allegations against her, including claims of abuse and neglect. These are not mere rumors. These are facts, and they have been covered up, buried, hidden, ignored. But I can no longer ignore them, not when my daughter's safety is on the line. I could feel the eyes of the courtroom on me. The murmurs started, quiet but rising in volume, as the implications of what I was saying began to settle over everyone in the room. Mark's lawyer stood abruptly, his face flushed. Objection, Your Honor, this is overruled, the judge said sharply, cutting him off. His gaze flicked from me to Mark, then back to me, as if assessing something beyond the words I had just spoken. Mark shifted in his seat, his face suddenly pale, his hands shaking slightly. I could see the cracks appearing in his calm demeanor. He was no longer in control, and I wasn't going to let him take it back. The truth has come to light, Your Honor, I continued, my voice unwavering. Emma deserves to be safe. She deserves a future where she isn't subjected to the same threats I faced when I was growing up. She deserves to have a mother who will protect her at all costs. I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was about Emma's future, about her safety, about my duty as a mother to fight for what was rightfully hers. Mark stood, his lawyer following suit. But I could tell he wasn't as confident as before. His movements were quick, fidgety. He tried to speak, but the judge held up a hand. Mr. Rivers, the judge said, his tone firm. You may sit. We have heard enough. The room went still. I could feel my pulse thundering in my chest. My heart was racing, but there was no fear in me anymore. I had fought for Emma, I had spoken the truth, and now it was time for the judge to decide. Mark and his lawyer sat down, and the judge turned to me. General Rivers, he said, his voice measured but with an undercurrent of finality. You have presented a compelling case. However, there is still much to be considered. The court will deliberate and issue a ruling in due course. I nodded, feeling the tension in my body start to ease just slightly. I had done everything I could. The truth was out there. It was no longer just my word against his. It was about Emma. And in the end, that would be what mattered most. I took my seat, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from my body, replaced by a deep sense of resolve. I had no idea how long it would take for the judge to make his decision. But in this moment, as the silence stretched on, I knew one thing for sure. I had already won, and Emma would be coming home with me. The courtroom was thick with silence as we waited. The judge, after hearing our final statements, had excused himself to deliberate. Mark, his lawyer, and my mother remained seated on their side of the room, all of them seemingly trying to appear unaffected by what had just transpired. I could feel the tension building, my heart still thudding in my chest from the weight of everything I had just laid bare. I wasn't sure how long we would be waiting, but every second stretched on as if the universe was holding its breath. I glanced over at Thomas, my lawyer, sitting beside me. He was calm as always, but even I could see the edge of anticipation in his eyes. He knew how much was at stake, how much I had at stake. We did everything we could, he said softly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. You did everything right. You've put your cards on the table. Now it's up to the judge. I nodded, swallowing hard. It felt like my entire life had led up to this moment, this battle for Emma. My career, my sacrifices, my choices as a mother, all of it had been wrapped up in a few days of hearings. But it wasn't over. Not yet. A few minutes later, the door to the judge's chamber opened and the courtroom fell silent once again. The judge walked back to his seat, the weight of his decision written all over his face. My stomach twisted in knots. Every inch of me was ready for whatever verdict he would deliver, but still, I couldn't stop myself from hoping for the best. General Rivers, the judge began, his voice steady, his eyes scanning over me. I have carefully considered the evidence presented by both parties, including the recent revelations concerning Melissa Rivers and the potential risks she poses to the well-being of your daughter. I could feel every set of eyes in the room on me as the judge spoke, but it was as if I couldn't hear anything beyond his voice. It was all leading up to this. The court has found that while there is no conclusive evidence to suggest that Melissa Rivers has directly harmed Emma Rivers, the concerns raised regarding her history of neglect and the fact that she is living in the same household as Emma are serious enough to warrant immediate action. The relationship between Mark Rivers and his daughter Emma has also raised questions, particularly regarding his ability to prioritize her emotional well-being over his personal issues. My heart stopped. I held my breath, afraid to let it out in case I was imagining what I was hearing. Was I really about to hear what I thought I was? The judge looked down at his notes for a moment before continuing. While the court recognizes the efforts made by General Rivers to maintain a relationship with her daughter while serving in the military, the balance of stability and emotional health has been found to lean in her favor. Given the information we have at this time and the concerns raised about the safety and well-being of Emma Rivers, the court has decided to grant sole custody to General Natalie Rivers. Visitation rights will be arranged for Mr. Rivers, but the child's primary residence will be with her mother. The words hit me like a freight train, but I didn't move, didn't speak. I couldn't. I looked at Mark's face, his expression frozen in shock. His mouth was open slightly, his eyes wide. I could see the disbelief in his features as he tried to process what had just been said. My mother's face was equally stunned. She didn't look at me, but I could feel the weight of her gaze, the quiet fury that had been building in her for years now fully unleashed. But in that moment, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because Emma was coming home. She was going to be with me. She was safe. The judge banged his gavel, and the courtroom buzzed with the murmur of reactions from all sides. Mark's lawyer was already speaking quickly to him, trying to salvage whatever dignity he could in the face of defeat. My mother was gathering her things, her face flushed with anger. But I didn't move. I just sat there, taking it all in, letting the moment wash over me. It was over. The battle for Emma was won, and though my heart was racing, the sharp edges of fear and anxiety slowly began to dull, replaced by something deeper: relief, pride. I wasn't broken. I had fought with everything I had, and I had won. Thomas turned to me, his expression softening with approval. "You did it," he said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and admiration. I nodded, but my gaze never wavered from the front of the courtroom. I couldn't stop staring at the judge, who was now signing the documents, officially making the decision final. And then, slowly, I turned to Mark. His face was pale, his jaw tight, but his eyes locked onto mine. There was no more smugness, no more sense of entitlement. He knew it was over. He knew that the daughter he had tried to claim, tried to manipulate, was now in my hands. And nothing would change that. As I stood, the weight of the past few days, the months of tension and fear finally lifted off my shoulders. I turned to leave, my heart pounding with anticipation. I was finally going to see Emma. I could already picture her, her bright eyes and warm smile running toward me with open arms. I reached for my phone, my hands still trembling slightly, and I sent a single text. "I'm coming home, Emma. I'm coming for you." And just like that, everything changed. It wasn't just a victory in court. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would be the mother I had always fought to be. Emma was safe, and nothing, not even Mark or my own family, would ever take her away from me again. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready. We were finally going to be okay. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the trees outside the park, casting long shadows across the grass. Emma and I sat side by side on a bench, our feet planted firmly on the earth, just enjoying the simplicity of the moment. The hum of life surrounded us. Children laughing, birds chirping, the distant murmur of conversation from other families. But for us, it felt like time had slowed, the world outside of this park fading away. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in days. She had always been my reason for pushing forward, for fighting through the darkest moments. But now I saw something different in her eyes. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was becoming her own person, with her own quiet strength. I saw the same resilience in her that I had in myself, the same ability to endure and come out stronger. "How are you feeling, kiddo?" I asked, keeping my voice light, but the question carried more weight than I intended. It was a simple question, but it felt like a bridge, a way to make sure we were really okay. Emma glanced up at me, her face still carrying the weight of the past few days. But there was something else there, something like peace. "I'm okay," she said softly. "It's just a lot to process, you know?" I nodded, giving her the space to speak. "I don't really understand everything that happened, but I know you're here. I know you're my mom, and I don't ever want to forget that." My chest tightened at her words. She didn't need to say it. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she leaned into me when she was scared or unsure. But hearing her say it, hearing her reassure me when I had been so afraid of losing her, I knew then that this battle, this fight for Emma, had been worth every sacrifice. "We've been through a lot, haven't we?" I said, my voice low as I leaned back on the bench, stretching my legs out in front of me. "But we're still standing." She smiled at me, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in days. "Yeah," she said, "I guess we are." A quiet peace settled between us. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about the next battle, the next court date, the next fight to keep her safe. For once, I could just be here with her, present in this moment, and that was enough. I watched as she took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the park, and I couldn't help but feel a little lighter myself. It wasn't just that I had won. It was that we had finally gotten the chance to be together without fear hanging over us. For once, we could just be. "Do you remember when we used to go to that old diner by the beach?" I asked her, my mind drifting back to simpler days before everything became complicated. Emma's eyes brightened. "The one with the milkshakes?" she asked, as if the memory itself could bring a smile to her face. "Yeah, I remember. You used to always let me get that giant sundae with the extra whipped cream." I chuckled at the thought. "You ate that sundae like it was your job." "And I didn't even feel sick after," she said, laughing. "It was the best sundae ever. You never told me I couldn't have it." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I never told you that because I wanted you to enjoy those little moments. I wanted to show you that it's okay to indulge, to just enjoy life without worrying about anything else. You deserve that." Her expression softened as she looked at me. "I think I get it now, Mom." I squeezed her hand, a small gesture, but one that carried so much more than words could express. I was here. I was her mom. And for once, after everything we'd been through, that was all I needed to be. "You know," I began, "things might not be perfect. We might still have our bumps in the road, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the ride. We'll figure it out day by day, together." Emma nodded, her eyes reflecting the quiet understanding between us. "Together," she repeated softly. The weight of the past few months, of the courtroom and the lies and the betrayals, seemed to finally lift in that moment. It didn't vanish entirely. It would take time, and it would always be a part of our story. But in that park, on that bench, I realized something important. The battle had been hard, but the real work, the healing, had only just begun. And it started here with us, just taking the time to be together, to laugh, to talk, to be present. "I don't need anything else right now," I said quietly, almost to myself. "I have you, and that's enough." Emma smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Yeah, it is." For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe easy. The future wasn't a promise of perfection, but it was ours. And as long as we had each other, I knew we could rebuild, piece by piece, the life that had been shattered and make something better from it. I looked down at Emma, her head resting against me, her face peaceful for the first time in weeks. And in that moment, surrounded by the sound of the world going on around us, I knew we were going to be okay.